Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really dense, just absolutely fascinating document, the August 6th Daily Intelligence Digest. Now, if you've been trying to understand the massive, often entirely unseen systems that are actively shaping our world right now, well, you are definitely in the right place. This report isn't just your standard list of the day's news. It's practically a masterclass in synthesis. It takes these seemingly disconnected global events, from local police tech to international spyware, from political campaign financing to the privatization of our public infrastructure, and it reveals the hidden connective tissue between them all. So we're going to decode this massive scale of data together, mapping out exactly what's happening just under the surface of global governance.
To make sense of the whole shebang, we've got a clear roadmap. We're starting with Section 1, the daily pulse data. Then we'll move into Section 2, democracy under pressure, followed by Section 3, the surveillance infrastructure. After that, we'll dive into Section 4, dark money and influence, and Section 5, public goods and institutions. Finally, we'll bring it all together in Section 6, the infrastructure of control. I promise you, by the end of this, all these disparate pieces are absolutely going to connect.
Section 1, the daily pulse data. Let's actually start with the sheer volume of information we're dealing with in this single daily digest. The number 43. The August 6 report logged exactly 43 distinct articles in just one single day. And that's not all. It also cross-referenced 22 dossier hits and published 7 analytical threads. Now, it's absolutely crucial to remember that this massive volume reflects just one specific day of gathered intelligence, based on parameters saved on August 6th. It's not some comprehensive map of the entire world, but this focused snapshot, it provides a razor-sharp lens into exactly where structural power is moving right now. So where was the data heaviest for the day? Well, the information landscape is basically dominated by 3 main pillars. There were 10 major items flagged under democratic integrity, 8 items exposing surveillance and biometrics, and 6 items diving deep into dark money and influence politics. And these aren't just isolated news categories either. As we're going to see, these are deeply overlapping systems. The report also makes a really sharp, honestly fascinating distinction in its methodology. 37 items came through manual intake. That's what does the heavy lifting for breaking narrative stories, things like the Pegasus spyware revelations and active election coverage. On the flip side, 6 items from automated intake are pulling in the incredibly dense institutional data. That's what drives the analysis on massive government agency contracts and global judicial mapping.
Section 2, democracy under pressure.
So the crucial takeaway here is that pressure on democratic systems doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes the shape of local capture, like in battleground Washington, where a mapped Christian nationalist network is utilizing business and church power. That exact same suppressive instinct mirrors how Australian state governments are actively reframing and criminalizing climate protests, or how mining interests down in Honduras resort to outright violence and the killing of defender Juan Lopez. And when you look at Central America, a review of 97 academic papers points to the root enabler, a suffocating concentration of media ownership. Local capture, criminalized dissent, monopolized information, these are parallel pressures, and they're happening globally.
Zooming in domestically, the report synthesizes how these exact pressures manifest in political coalitions. It lays out the current fracturing within the U.S. Democratic primary landscape across several publications. On one hand, sources note a moderate and centrist backlash, highlighting heavy AIPAC spending and reactions to candidates like El Sayed in Michigan. On the other hand, the reporting frames the progressive wing's strategy, specifically looking at Zohran Mamdani's ability to drive youth and black voter turnout by strictly focusing on affordability messaging. It's a really data-driven look at how modern political coalitions are actively being stress-tested.
And perhaps the most stark, data-heavy finding in this section comes from the steady state. This is a massive assessment where over 340 former intelligence officials applied rigorous analytical tradecraft to domestic politics. Their conclusion? That the United States is actively trending toward authoritarian consolidation. Listen, when hundreds of intelligence professionals apply the same analytical models they use for foreign adversaries to our own domestic trends, that's a metric we absolutely have to pay attention to. Moving right along to Section 3, the surveillance infrastructure. You know, we so often hear about surveillance as this abstract big brother concept, but the report explicitly ties micro-level harms directly to macro-level spending. On the ground, we're seeing flock automated license plate readers actively causing wrongful detentions due to misreads in places like Fargo and Delhi.
It also highlights these cameras being used for targeted pretext stops, like tracking a perfectly legal road trip in Wisconsin or enforcing cannabis stops in Michigan, often relying on commercial profiling rather than actual intelligence. But why is this tech absolutely everywhere? Well, it's because of the macro reality mapped by the Brennan Center, a staggering $2.9 billion ecosystem of Department of Homeland Security contracting for domestic surveillance and biometrics. The local errors are literally a direct byproduct of this massive infrastructure. Let's take a look at how this builds on the international stage with the Forbidden Stories investigation, codenamed Morgan. Step 1 begins with an incredibly opaque geopolitical arrangement between Morocco, the UAE, and Israel. In Step 2, through this channel, Morocco's domestic intelligence agency acquires the infamous Pegasus spyware. By Step 3, we see the targeted deployment. And it wasn't just for internal use. Device forensics show it was allegedly deployed against elites in Gabon, an African ally, during their 2019 succession crisis. It just perfectly illustrates how commercial surveillance tech is actively reshaping international diplomacy.
Section 4. Dark Money and Influence.
The report dedicates 6 separate investigations to unpacking just one single entity, the think tank Third Way. Now, they brand themselves as the moderate voice of the Democratic Party. They even recently advised the party to drop small grassroots donors. But the grant tracking reveals a very different reality. Their funding is heavily fueled by corporate interests and traditional GOP donors. We're talking Deutsche Bank, Amgen, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and even the Kochs. This dark money backing aligns perfectly with their historical pushes for free trade and targeted attacks on progressive candidates like Bernie Sanders. This exact kind of hidden influence is what's prompting new initiatives to create independent journalism maps aiming to resist billionaire framing in the media.
Section 5. Public Goods and Institutions. When we start looking at institutional resilience, the friction is everywhere and it's global. It's ideological, with the fossil fuel industry pushing multi-million-dollar curriculum programs into Australian public schools. It's physical, like the catastrophic power failures totally crippling the UK rail network. It's legal, as citizens face unprecedented accountability tests, like the daughter of Juliana Leon suing Big Oil over her mother's climate-linked heatwave death. And it's operational, laid completely bare by a watchdog report showing FEMA cutting staff without adequate planning, right as future disaster workloads are guaranteed to surge. And that friction is intensely visible right at the state and administrative levels. In Missouri, folks are facing double-digit spikes in Affordable Care Act premiums directly tied to expiring subsidies. Down in Louisiana, there is a truly harrowing story of administrative denial, where the Attorney General is actively opposing compensation for Elvis Brooks, a man wrongfully imprisoned for 42 years. 42 years! And at the federal level, we're seeing some staggering financial fantasy, as the Government Accountability Office just exposed billions in fabricated claims regarding Elon Musk's proposed Department of Government Efficiency. These are the very real-world impacts of state capture. This institutional reshaping extends straight into electoral and legal integrity worldwide. Whether it's election deniers in Georgia pushing Eagle Eye and LEVG voter roll purge tools, or the structural shift of Donald Trump installing a Project 2025 author at the U.S. Interior Department's Inspector General Office, oversight is actively being challenged. In response, we're seeing defensive mapping pop up globally. The International Commission of Jurists is tracking strategic litigation to protect judicial independence in Europe, while the OAS has already released a baseline report to safeguard Costa Rica's 2026 elections. Finally, Section 6, the infrastructure of control. Okay, before our final synthesis, the report clusters a really rapid series of tactical global shifts. Economically, supply chains are fracturing. The U.S. is importing peak Middle East crude, yet hit a 40-year first of absolute zero from Saudi Arabia in July. Demographically, European border dynamics are shifting fast around the Ceuta migrant crisis and Spain's left-wing government. And politically, we see highly tactical maneuvering, from Republicans manipulating primary dynamics by propping up Jasmine Crockett in a Senate run, to strategic messaging campaigns designed specifically to preempt expected waves of Muslim bigotry. When we pull the camera all the way back, the connective tissue of all these global events is just staggering. Notice how specific nodes span massive chunks of this intelligence. Donald Trump isn't just in one category. He spans 8 of the 11 themes for the day, connecting dark money, legal integrity, and state capture. The Department of Homeland Security spans 6 themes, bridging everyday surveillance with massive federal contracts. And even international entities, like Morocco's DGHST, act as bridges, connecting surveillance tech directly to global immigration clusters. Literally everything is connected.
Which brings us to the report's most chilling macro finding, quoted directly right here. Today's flagged items skew toward infrastructure of control, tools and contracts, not just individual incidents. We're not just looking at a few bad apples or isolated political events anymore. Whether it's a multi-billion-dollar biometric contract, automated license plate readers, voter roll purge software, or international spyware deals, modern governance is shifting heavily towards systemic, automated, and often entirely unseen tools of control.
So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. As this infrastructure of control expands silently, mostly through boring bureaucratic contracts, automated data intake, and opaque funding, what unseen systems are currently shaping your daily reality? The signs are all there, hidden right in the data, just waiting to be synthesized. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.